The Black Ship Side Story, Barony of Screaming Forests. Day 5, Part 2. Outside the inn, a table had been set up with all sorts of different cold food in bowls, and someone had written, "Help yourself," on a simple sign. Wyatt started off picking a few things that he recognized. There was egg salad and potato salad, some cold cuts of meat, and some apples, and then he just chose things that looked nice or smelled good to fill his plate. Even after he had finished, he was not entirely sure what everything was, but it had all tasted good. He briefly went into the kitchen to thank the cooks. As he had told Elizabeth, it was important that people's work be appreciated, and he did not want to upset the people who were feeding him. Then he and the pilots went to find the 2 houses that Ino had suggested. Both buildings were essentially identical, just over 20 rooms laid out around 3 sides of a courtyard, with various extra storerooms accessible from the courtyard. The 4th side of the courtyard was a 3-meter-high wall and a heavy double wooden gate. In the end, they chose the one nearer to the rail lines, since that was where Wyatt planned to build a permanent shuttle pad. Wyatt was about to leave the 3 looking around the house when Johann quietly said, "Excuse me, my lord, but I was wondering, would it be okay if I changed a few things?" Wyatt looked at Johann and saw a nervous young man, clearly a little frightened, and said, "Firstly, my name is Wyatt. If you cannot bring yourself to call me Wyatt, you can call me Sir. Secondly, we have been here only 20 minutes. What have you seen in that time that you'd like to change?" Johann said, "Well, sir, I was wondering if I could change the color of my room. They are all very boring, and well, can we do something with the courtyard?" Wyatt looked at the young man's earnest expression and at his father's shocked face. Then he laughed as he replied, "Well, we are short of paint, but once we get some, you can paint it whatever color you like, Johann. But what do you want to do to the courtyard?" A now beaming Johann quickly answered, "Well, sir, I've grown up on mining stations. We never had gardens or outside spaces, and, well, the place where we had lunch, it was so nice sitting outside in the sun, I thought, well, sir, I thought it would be really nice if we could have something like that here." Wyatt kept smiling, saying, "Johann, so long as you keep it tidy and don't upset your father or Thierry here, then I don't see why you can't do as you wish with the courtyard. But I should tell you, for the time being you will be eating in the restaurants of Newtown every day until we get new kitchen equipment shipped in. Right now that's the inn where you had lunch today, but hopefully in 2 more days there will be a wider choice. There's even going to be a restaurant right on the beach. Speaking of eating, dinner is at 7 p.m. I suggest you continue having a look round your new home. If there's anything that needs fixing, make a note of it, and let Aino in the town hall know. I'm sure he will sort it out for you." All 3 men thanked Wyatt, and he left them to investigate their new residence. Though he thought, as he left, that Johann's smile was infectious. If all he had to do to help one person recover from what they had seen on the Eternal Garden was let them paint their room, whatever color they wanted, then that was totally fine with him. But he made a mental note to see about getting colored paints. There were other young people and children who might want to do the same. In the meantime, he looked at his map. There was the first carpenter's workshop not far away. It only required a 10-minute walk to get there. But Wyatt found himself disappointed. This was not an old-style workshop, but one full of computer-controlled machine tools. There was even a laser in one corner. Still, it was not a total loss. This would, he was sure, help with the souvenir idea. He followed the map to the next carpenter's workshop, passing various small industrial buildings, a forge, and even a glassworks. Clearly, at one point, this small town had many occupations. Perhaps the previous nobles had wanted to produce as many of the town's needs as they could. There was sadly no one left alive to ask. But maybe there would be notes, such as they had found at the farms, that might give some insight. In the rear corner of the second workshop, he found what he was looking for: a set of carving chisels, knives, and even a couple of rasps. The handles were in poor condition, but the metal was clean and bright. He kept smiling as he realized he already had the perfect replacement handles back on the Noir Navio. He followed the map and the road to take him down to the harbor. There he found Ino and Elizabeth helping to load fish into the plastic supply crates, the ones previously used to bring supplies into Newtown. One crate was being loaded into the back of a small vehicle as he walked up, the solitary working crane on the quayside gently lowering it into place. He called out as he approached, Good use of the crane, I know, but how am I going to get those crates onto the shuttle at the top of the hill? Ino laughed. I'm not stupid, Wyatt. I found 10 of the strongest lads we have and got them to wait up by the shuttle. None of these crates weighs more than 100 kilos, heavy but manageable. I split the contents roughly in two as you asked. They have red and blue marks on them. Tell one lot to unload everything with red marks and the other blue. I did tell the guys to put the crates in 2 piles in the shuttle and to separate them out a bit, but to put them on the center line, I figured you wouldn't want an extra 2 tons all on one side. Like I said, I'm not stupid. As he watched the vehicle quietly but swiftly, went up the hill, leaving just a few more crates for a final trip. Elizabeth passed Wyatt a small box and a folded letter. Please tell my father to eat the damn fish. No problem, I'll pass on the message, said Wyatt. Do you think I've got enough time to see how the boatyard is doing? Aino replied, 15, maybe 20 minutes for it to drive to the shuttle, offload, drive back down, and for us to load up the last of it. Wyatt walked across the bridge to the boatyard. Inside, he recognized the mechanic he'd brought down to help with the engines, but no one else was there, nor was the big fishing boat with the damaged hull. The mechanic looked up from the engine he was working on as Wyatt came through the door, recognizing him at once. Good afternoon, sir. I'm afraid everyone's out on the boats. We're seeing if it's still leaking. The boss thought he'd fixed everything yesterday. But when we put her in the water, she started to leak. A split plank, apparently. Anyway, we fixed that this morning. Put her in the water at lunchtime, and when we came back from lunch, she was still dry. So they took her for a short trip to double-check. The fishermen took the other boat, just in case there needs to be a rescue. Wyatt looked at the engine. I'm sure I was told that engine would never run again, yet you look as if you think it might. The mechanic grinned at him. Yes and no, sir, he said. The engine that was here will not run again, nor will the engine that was in a pile of junk outside. But they are the same make and model of engine, and what was wrong with this one, a cracked cylinder head, is totally different to what was wrong with the other, a hole in the sump. So I stripped both down and am just about done putting the best bits from the two together to give us a working engine. This plus a few spare parts might let me get it into a boat tomorrow and see if it runs. Wyatt nodded slowly as he considered this before saying, Well, looks like you are doing good work. I won't interrupt any longer. When your boss returns, ask him to deliver a progress report to Aino at the town hall, please. Then, before waiting for any further conversation, he left. As he stepped out, however, he noticed that the yard was looking much tidier and cleaner than when they had first arrived. Wyatt quickly returned over the bridge to discover that the vehicle had all but finished being loaded. Seeing that there was a spare seat next to the driver, he called to Aino. I expect I'll see you tomorrow, but I'm going to get a lift up to the shuttle to save time. Aino's cheerful reply of, Okay, Wyatt, see you then, kept him smiling, as did the surprisingly good acceleration of the little vehicle up the hill. Wyatt vaguely recognized the man as one of the helpers he had previously brought down, but he had no idea of his name, so as they went up the hill, he asked, What's it like driving this thing? The man turned to him and said, It's actually quite fun, my lord, a lot of acceleration, but it only gets to about 40 kilometers per hour top speed. Wyatt sighed. Wyatt, not my lord, not Baron, just Wyatt, please. Or if you must, then sir. I'm just another commoner who got lucky. Well then, I'm George, sir. Odd job man, driver, occasional painter and decorator, and sometimes gardener. Wyatt held out his hand. Pleased to meet you, George. After a moment of indecision, George shook his hand. Pleased to meet you, Wyatt. As they reached the shuttle, Wyatt thanked George for the lift and started pre-flighting the shuttle, as the last of the fish was loaded on board. 5 minutes later, he was in the air heading for the aid station. Less than 40 minutes later, he was landing again. Tornell came out to see him, but this time Wyatt had a gift. As he greeted the older man, Wyatt passed him the small box with Elizabeth's note saying, Your daughter said to tell you to eat the damn fish. Tornell took a quick look inside the box and laughed. I'd love to, he said, but how can I get away with eating fresh fish when my injured men are on rations? Wyatt looked at him. Then with a big grin, he said, I thought you might say that in the back of the shuttle there's 2 stacks of boxes full of fish. It was only caught this morning. Take off the stack nearest the access ramp. There's about a ton of fish there, so you need some help. Tornell took a radio from his belt and made a call. Pretty soon, 20 men were hauling the boxes off the shuttle. As soon as they finished, 4 more stretchers were loaded back onto the shuttle, and Wyatt made to get back on board. Tornell reached out to Wyatt, asking, "What do I owe you for the fish, Lieutenant Commodore?" Wyatt shook his head. "They are a gift, General, an excess beyond what we could use." He paused, thinking of what Johann had said earlier. Actually, there might be something. One young man asked me earlier if he could decorate his room with a less boring color. I told him he would have to wait. I know you said you could find us white paint, but is there any way you could find us some colors to make things a bit more, well, vibrant, I guess? There are 50 youngsters off a Drazen cattle ship who could do with some healing. Maybe letting them choose their room color might help them heal. Tornell thought for a while, then slowly said, "When I was a child, I went with my father to a store to get paint for the house. I remember there being a machine in the shop that let you make any color you could want. I don't know if any such machines still exist or if we have whatever they need to change the paint color, but I'll ask for you." Wyatt held out his hand. "That's good enough for me." Tornell shook his hand, and as he did so, realized that he was beginning to like the young man opposite him. A few minutes later, after a quick check of the shuttle to make sure nothing had fallen off, Wyatt was heading back towards the Eternal Garden. As he flew up, he contacted Galt on the radio, asking that someone find the last remaining noble of his prospective team. It was time to meet this organizer, to find out if he was any good. He also told him about the ton of fish in the shuttle's cargo area. On arrival at the Eternal Garden, Wyatt accompanied the wounded to the temporary medical center that had been created for Tornell's injured people. Seeing they were being well taken care of, he went off to find the last noble, Marcus. As he left the medical center, he saw a Yikanti waiting for him, one he thought he recognized. "Feshik, is that you?" he asked. Feshik's head bobbed up and down as she replied, "Yes, Lou. Wyatt? I don't know if you can help, but, I've got a problem and Jincho says you are a friend of Yikanti who is willing to listen." Wyatt laughed. "I bet those were not the actual words he used. I'm sure he called me worm brain." If Feshik could have looked more embarrassed, she would have, but all she said was, "He trusts you." Wyatt laughed again. "Okay, Feshik, if Her Highness can put up with his names, I'm sure I can. What's the problem?" Feshik just looked at him, then said, "There are 137 Yikanti who don't want to return to the hierarchy, but who don't want to serve on a principality warship either, and you are the only person I can think of that might be able to help." Wyatt looked down at Feshik. "I thought the idea was that any Yikanti who was willing to serve the principality would be found a place and everyone else would be ferried back to the hierarchy. Are you telling me that there's 137 Yikanti who didn't want to do either, and they are still here?" If Feshik could have looked more miserably embarrassed when she looked back up at Wyatt and nodded yes, then Wyatt did not know how. "I assume that someone has told Princess Clara?" he asked. Feshik said, "I do not know, I have not, but I am sure she knows. She has not, however, said anything yet, and those that remain are still getting fed." Wyatt stood looking at the young Yikanti, not sure what to do. Finally, he said, "Okay, I have no idea what to do, but it won't do any harm for me to talk to them. Lead the way." Feshik quickly led Wyatt down long corridors until they came to the chambers where the remaining Yikanti sat quietly talking amongst themselves. The 2 Marines on the door snapped to attention as Wyatt approached, and they opened the doors to allow him and Feshik to enter. Wyatt walked over to the small raised platform and sat down. Feshik passed him the microphone, but Wyatt passed it back and quietly said, "Please translate for me." Feshik nodded that she understood. Wyatt, with Feshik translating, began, "All right, you don't want to go back to the hierarchy, and you don't want to work on a principality warship. What do you want?" The Yikanti started to get up and wander over towards him. Wyatt could see a few that were clearly warriors, but most seemed to be nervous, more than anything. He let them gather round, staying seated so as to match eye levels. Finally, one of the warriors said, "Who are you, human?" "Why should we talk?" Before he could reply, Feshik said, "This is a friend of Yikanti. His name is Wyatt Staples. He is a Baron and Lieutenant Commodore, and he is also a friend of Princess Clara. Tell him what you want, and he will listen. Maybe he will help if he can." Wyatt sat in silence for almost 3 minutes, waiting for one of the Ikanti to say something. He was expecting it to be one of the warriors, so he was surprised when it was one of the younger, smaller ones who spoke up. "Please, Baron Wyatt Staples, we just wish to be left to live in peace," he gestured around him. "We are mostly artists and farmers, with a small number of slaves and some warriors who do not wish to fight other people's wars, either those of your principality or the hierarchy." Wyatt sat pondering the request. Unknowingly, his finger slowly tapped out a pattern matching his heartbeat on his thigh. He could understand it. After all, many humans wanted to stay neutral in the current principality. But could he do so? As he looked at these tired-looking, sad-eyed Ikanti, he felt a certain amount of sympathy towards them, and an idea began to grow in his mind. Finally, he said, "I might be able to help. I have a small amount of land on the planet below, a human town, some forest and farmland surrounded mostly by the sea. I would have to seek permission from both my princess and the general who commands the rest of the planet of Hago. I would also have to ask the inhabitants of the town where you will have homes. I won't go against any of them. The general and his people have been fighting the Drazan. The town's people are your fellow prisoners. Neither group might want to have more aliens on their world. But I will ask if you first answer 2 questions for me. What will you do to help the town? And will you agree to abide by the same rules I have set for the humans who will be your neighbors?" This caused the Ikanti to start a lot of chirping and squawking that formed their natural language that went on for almost 15 minutes. Feshik quietly whispered in his ear, "They are trying to decide which of their skills would be of most use to you. They want to convince you they will help, but they don't know what will help their cause the most." Wyatt brought his hands together in a loud clap. Then he stood up and said, "You said there were different sets of skills in your group. Why don't you split yourselves into those with different skills, and then each group can appoint someone to speak for them?" This time, things went faster. In minutes, they were split into 4 groups and 2 individuals, and after only another minute, they stood in silence before him. Wyatt could see that the group to his left was clearly made up of warriors, so he faced them and asked, "What would you bring to my lands?" The largest Ikanti stepped forward and said, "We bring our skill at arms. If you will grant us shelter, we pledge to defend your land against all who would try to take it from you." Wyatt pointed to the next group, and a disheveled Ikanti came forward and timidly said, "We are slaves. We will serve however you wish." Wyatt replied, "I will not suffer anyone to be a slave on my land. If I give you homes, then you will no longer be slaves. So tell me, as free Ikanti, what do you bring to my town?" The same Ikanti came forward again and said, "We have many simple skills. We can work in fields, help build or paint or carry or whatever you might need that requires little training to accomplish. We would pledge to offer hard work." Wyatt nodded, showing he understood, and pointed to the 2 individual Ikanti. The first came forward and said, "I am an architect. I can design many structures and do the calculations required for them. Though my skills are in Ikanti design, the mathematics applies to all." The second individual then came forward and said, "I am an engineer. I am familiar with mechanical engineering in many fields, including thermodynamics, fluid flow, pressure vessels, and engineering design, as well as calculating stresses and loads in both fixed objects and mobile vehicles. If it is an engineering problem, I can solve it for you." The next group, looking only a little better than the slaves, sent forward their spokesperson. "We are farmers. We farm. Humans are also farmers, so you probably have many like us already." Wyatt nodded his head in agreement. "But Ikanti farming uses different methods and techniques. Perhaps we can share these with your people to the benefit of both our peoples?" Wyatt thought on that for a moment, saying, "Perhaps," before pointing to the largest group, which appeared to number more than the rest combined. The same Ikanti who had made the initial request came forward once again and said, "We are artists. We have many different skills, and I do not know if you can use us, but amongst us are those skilled in painting, drawing, carving, pottery, metalwork, glass blowing, and stained glass." He paused for a few moments before adding, "I do not know if this will make a difference, but many Ikanti also have a love of performing, though we have no plays or instruments with which to do so." Wyatt recalled the glassworks he had passed only a few hours earlier. Then another series of thoughts occurred, and so he said, "A number of human prisoners of the Drazan are children. I have in mind to allow each child to decorate their rooms however they wish. I wonder if you would be willing to help in this, and perhaps also to teach your skills to anyone who might wish to learn. When I was young, I learned some basic art skills that I still enjoy. I think that might help you integrate with the townspeople." The Yakanti talked briefly with the other artists before replying to Wyatt, "We would be honored to be allowed to do these things. Caring for the young and passing on knowledge are good. It is why we do not wish to return to our homes. There, the hierarchy controls everything. Only their ideas are permitted in art. Nothing is allowed that isn't propaganda or paid pieces exalting the hierarchs and other officials, and they decide what can be taught and who can learn. May I ask, what are the rules you have set for the humans that you wish us to abide by?" Wyatt nodded again. "The rules are very simple and are in part there because my funds are limited. I will give each of you a home that is in good enough condition to be able to move in. Except for the kitchens, I have to order new kitchen equipment for every home in Newtown, so until those arrive I will provide meals from the restaurants. If Ikanti needs specialist kitchen equipment to cook, process, or store food, please let me know, and I will see if I can obtain it. If not, perhaps it can be made in Newtown. So for at least the next year, your food and homes are free. But I cannot afford to pay you. I will try to give everyone a datapad and 1,000 credits so you can afford small things you might need for your homes. I will also try to get whatever equipment and materials you need to start working. Newtown and the Barony will be run as a cooperative. Anything that is sold outside the town will bring in credits. I take a percentage to help cover my expenditure. The town gets a percentage for providing you with homes and the facilities you need, and you get a percentage for your efforts. For the warriors amongst you, if I am granted permission to bring you to the planet, I will see if I can have you added to the auxilla. This will pay you a wage. For those working on the farms or helping with maintenance, you too will get a wage. The better the town does, the better off we all are eventually, but it will take time. Those are my rules. Everyone helps everybody else. I will return later today. I hope to tell you if I have got permission and for you to tell me if you will abide by my rules." With that, he left the Ikanti to their squawking discussions and went to find the last, somewhat mysterious noble. Feshik stayed with her fellow Ikanti to help them coordinate, but as Wyatt left, she shot him a thankful, intrigued glance. Going back towards the shuttle bay, he found Lieutenant Ostras waiting for him, accompanied by a very large man in civilian clothing. The lieutenant saluted and said, "Sir, this is Marcus Fitzwalter. Lieutenant Galt Terome requested I find him for you." Wyatt looked at the time, then turned to the large man. "Come with me, please. We can talk in the shuttle." Marcus looked at the man wearing armor and carrying a pair of pistols and simply said, "Yes, sir." Wyatt held the cockpit door open for Marcus, gesturing to one of the spare seats, and said, "Strap in, it's only a short flight." Marcus had never been in the cockpit of a shuttle before, so he did as he was told and strapped his 2-meter-tall muscular body into the surprisingly comfortable chair that the man in black armor had pointed to. Wyatt took the shuttle out of the Eternal Garden and got clearance for the Noir Navio, then turned to talk to the man in the seat next to him. "So I know your name is Marcus, that you are listed as a noble, and that you are a volunteer for helping me out on Hago. Oh, and that apparently you are an organizer." Wyatt paused, realizing he had left out his usual introduction. "My name is Wyatt Staples. A few months ago I was a commoner piloting a compost hauler. I'm now a baron and a lieutenant commodore. If you are going to work for me, then please call me Wyatt. Tell me about yourself. I don't even know what an organizer does. Just that you are one, and I was told that would be useful." Marcus took a minute to think about things before he started. "Well, Wyatt, I'm a bastard, literally, on my world. If you are a bastard, they add a Fitz in front of your father's name. My father was a Walter, so I'm Fitzwalter. I'm not part of his family, not officially acknowledged at least. But he paid for my education and confirmed his status as my father. So I'm officially just a noble, marginally ahead of exiles on the rank and status rolls." He laughed, a deep belly laugh. "Don't get me wrong. I'm grateful for the education and the tiny bit of status, but my father told me last year that now I was 21, there would be no more money, and I was on my own. Marcus considered that for a moment before shrugging and continuing. That's never been a problem. When you are my size, even other nobles have doubts about picking on you. My father paid for my education, but I paid for everything else. I paid my rent by hard work, lots of lifting and carrying stuff, people moving homes, sometimes working for delivery companies. My last job was delivering beer barrels for a brewery. Bars are often generous on hot days, especially if you can lift the barrels into the racks for them, rather than dropping them just inside the door. He grinned at the memory. Now, as to what an organizer does, normally we either work for or with an administrator. Let's say I'm working at a factory, and their administrator says to me, "Can you find some people to clean up the place?" Then I go into the factory and see what actually needs to be cleaned up, and I find suitable people to do the type of cleaning needed and make sure it gets done as quickly as possible and as well as it can be. I'm a people person. I find out what they are good at, or maybe what they'd like to do. It's not always the same, and typically I work as a go-between for nobles and commoners, given I'm both. It works out okay. Also, it usually gives me enough money to pay the rent, and enough time off that I can have fun. Wyatt asked, "And what do you call fun?" Marcus's face took on a big grin. Anything that's physically challenging, I like to push myself to my limits, so climbing mountains, outdoor survival, big game hunting, deep sea fishing, skiing untracked mountains, after climbing them in the middle of winter, that sort of thing. Wyatt thought about that, then shrugged. There was nothing in the list of fun things that he was concerned about, so he said, "Well, the Barony is not large, but we do have a mountain, lots of forest, the sea borders much of it, a town with a harbor, and that's about it. The biggest game are things the locals call razor claws. I know for a fact there's at least one large one within the Barony. They are described as huge, lizard-like creatures with a thick fur coat. Apparently they hunt in packs. The evidence for the big one suggests it can, on its hind legs, reach at least 2.5 meters up a vertical surface. Its claws are at least 20 centimeters in length, and apparently you need a cannon to stop one. If you want to risk your life hunting those for fun, well, I won't stop you, but I'd prefer you not to throw your life away in the process. There are also deer-like creatures. They are both wild and farmed, and porcupigs, again wild and farmed. There are still a few on the farm, so feel free to see what they are like. One restriction: there are naturally white deer on the planet, and I have declared these protected. The locals consider harming them to be incredibly bad luck. I'm inclined to agree. Marcus looked at the black-armored man and the white-winged stag emblem on his chest. "Understood," was all he said. Wyatt added, "Oh, and there might still be Drazen lurking around. I killed one a couple of days ago. No more came running, so it was probably on its own. But there are still likely some out there. If you find one, kill it and burn the corpse in a ditch." Marcus looked at Wyatt when he said, "You killed a Drazen on your own?" he asked. Wyatt simply replied, "Yes, I don't like Drazan." As big and powerful as Marcus was, there was something in Wyatt's voice that sent a chill down his spine. For all his casual outward nature, he realized then that Wyatt was more than he seemed. He decided to change the subject slightly. "So, what do you need an organizer for?" he asked. Wyatt glanced in his direction and decided that it was a genuine question. "Because I have been given a 50-year-old town that no one has done any serious repair work on in the best part of 30 years, a population of over 1,500 who are all, save for one, former prisoners of the Drazen. I might even have 137 Yikanti to add to that mix. I should know later today. I've got, if you agree to help, just 3 young nobles, a possible future noble, and a tough sergeant major to run things, and that's it." Marcus winced. "Can I ask about the others?" Wyatt said, "Sure, in addition to the auxiliary sergeant major, there's Ino. He seems to be a pretty good administrator. At least he's been doing a good job so far. Rachel, I only met yesterday, is the chief accountant. Princess Clara thinks she is trustworthy, which is good enough for me. Anything happens to Rachel, there will be no funds. And then there's Elizabeth. She's the only local, General Swallowtail, who's effectively the military governor of the entire planet of Hago Center. When I asked for someone that could tell me about the native plants and animals. She is also his daughter and, of course, a spy for her father. I have no objections if that keeps the general happy. He is, I think, a good man. If he can survive 5 years, then he will be made a noble, which in turn means his daughter becomes one as well. Marcus let out a soft then asked, "And my job?" Wyatt answered, "I can foresee a lot of jobs that will require lots of hard but not difficult work. Painting houses, shifting sand off the road and onto the beach, prepping houses to move in, and the first job will be assembling a team who will remove what I've been told are almost new commercial kitchens from a number of barracks and then installing them in a number of restaurants in Newtown." Marcus asked, "So you need me to assemble teams who can do the work and then what, oversee the work itself?" Wyatt nodded. "That's more or less how I was thinking, but why don't you tell me how you would organize things? We've got about 5 minutes till we dock." Marcus didn't even need to think about it. "For starters," he said, "you are thinking about it the wrong way. You already have restaurants with old, not-working kitchen equipment. So we take everybody to Newtown first and work out what tools we need and how to safely remove the existing units. With those all unfastened, we load up on a shuttle in, say, teams of 10. Each team goes to a different location and is dropped off to start removing a set of equipment. Back in Newtown, you can have another team load up the old equipment and take it somewhere, either a dumping site or maybe a warehouse so it can be stripped down and salvaged. The shuttle, having dropped each team off, goes back and waits for the first to finish, collects them and the kitchen and takes it to Newtown, repeat until done." As Wyatt brought the shuttle into the dock, he said, "That is a much better idea, but I think we will have 7 teams. 2 will stay in Newtown because there are also some brand new units. Once I have dropped off the first 4 teams, we can go pick up the new units, and I can drop off the 5th team on the way back to Newtown where the 6th and 7th can be waiting to install new units." Once docked, with the boxes of fish being unloaded and taken to the galley, Wyatt located Rachel. Galt had found her a small auxiliary communications room to work from as an office. As soon as they entered the room, Wyatt could hear the conversation between Rachel and a man with a nasally sounding voice coming from the terminal on the desk saying, "And I keep telling you, miss, I can't do anything without Baron Staples' approval. You could be anyone, and it's more than my job's worth to let a mere slip of a girl try to put in such an order." Wyatt strode over to the monitor and leaned down so that his face was next to Rachel's. Looking at the rat-faced man on the screen with his dull, gray, cybernetic eyes, Wyatt said, "I'm Baron Staples. Is there a problem?" His stress must have been evident as the tone of his voice sent shivers down both Rachel's and Marcus's spines. It was a voice that told anyone who heard it that death was just around the corner. Its effect on the other man was immediate, as he suddenly became eager to please. "Of course not, my lord. There was a simple misunderstanding about your secretary's authorization." Wyatt looked at the screen, seeing beads of sweat forming on the other man's face. What the hell, he thought to himself. Clara said to use her name if it helped. Why not? "Lady Rachel," he began, "was appointed to my personal staff by the second Princess, Her Royal Highness Clara Astor. She is not my secretary. She is my chief accountant. Are you perhaps suggesting that Her Highness might have made a mistake?" If the odious little noble had been alarmed to see Wyatt's face on the screen, the mention of Clara's name, along with her appointing Rachel to his staff, had drained all color from his face and appeared to have reduced him to a stammering bag of nerves. "I would never make such a suggestion, my lord. I was merely—" Wyatt cut in, questioning Lady Rachel's authority. "You seem to be in some distress, sir. Perhaps you need a nice cold drink of water. Then perhaps, when you have composed yourself, you might return the call to Lady Rachel and assist her. I know I and Her Highness will appreciate your aid." The rat-faced man, rapidly nodding his head up and down, simply said, "Thank you, my lord, I'll do just that." Then the screen went blank. Looking at Rachel, Wyatt asked, "What was all that about?" Rachel replied, "That unpleasant fellow is the sales manager for one of the best datapad manufacturers in the Principality. They have a production facility within Ferentis territory. When I was looking for the datapads you want, his name kept being mentioned as the person to speak to. I finally got hold of him and, well, you saw he was treating me like a schoolgirl." Wyatt smiled, then said, "I don't think that will be the case any longer. In fact, judging from the color his skin turned when I mentioned that Princess Clara had appointed you, I think he was on the verge of dropping dead from terror." I might have gone just a tiny bit too far there. Rachel giggled, and Marcus laughed at that. Wyatt continued, "Oh, Rachel, this is Marcus. I think he's going to be my organizer. Marcus, this is Rachel. She's my accountant. Why don't you two introduce yourselves? I need to go and see if Her Highness is available for me to have a quick word." And with that, he left the room as Rachel and Marcus began to talk at the same time. Checking that Clara could see him, Wyatt quickly rushed to her cabin. The door slid open as he approached, and the two Royal Marines on duty simply nodded to him as he wordlessly passed them. Inside, Clara stood behind the table on which stood an open basket of sweet pastries. Cynthia was nowhere to be seen. Wyatt ignored the basket. Looking at Clara, he simply said, "You knew about the Yakanti yesterday but said nothing. Why?" Clara looked into his eyes without any sense of fear or shame. "I told you when House Ferentis gave you your new Barony, Wyatt, that it would give you the chance to practice diplomacy. Diplomacy is often about persuading other people to do things they might not want to do. The fact that you are here tells me that you have already decided to help the Yakanti refugees." Wyatt replied, "So you are letting me handle it however I want?" he asked. Clara grinned at him. "Yes, I am curious to see how Tornell will react. 137 Yakanti will cause no issues on a planet with about 2 billion humans, so House Ferentis won't really care. A curiosity, nothing more, as far as they will see it. But I don't know what General Tornell Swallowtail will say." Wyatt went on, "I got my 2 pilots, well, 2 and a kid who knows how to fly. I also found my organizer. He's huge, bigger even than Cynthia. I left him talking to Rachel. So when can I have Jincho?" Clara laughed at that. "I figured you would manage that. The Eternal Garden mentioned this morning that you had got them, so I told Jincho he's working just for you for the next 2 days. Wyatt sighed for a moment, then thought of a couple more things he should ask. "I just put a noble in his place. He was talking down to Rachel over the comm system. I not only confirmed she works for me, but added that you had appointed her to my staff." Clara burst into laughter as Wyatt went on to describe the unpleasant man's reaction. She was still laughing when Wyatt added, "Is it okay for her to use that line in the future?" All Clara did was nod as the laughter kept going. Then Wyatt added, "I was thinking about what people perceive. Can I get some clothes made up for Marcus, Eno, Rachel, Elizabeth, and the Sergeant Major? Something smart but not gaudy. I want them. When they have to do something official to look the part. Not like nobles, just competent. I expect Eno and Rachel will need 2 sets. I think most of their time will be spent in offices, but the others just need something to wear for official duties." Clara looked at him before saying, "That's actually a good idea, Wyatt. Maybe you are learning more than you realize, but you don't have to ask. Officially, you are now the 3rd most senior person on the Noir Navio. After myself and Admiral Redford, you can use the fabricators, but if it's not for ship use, then you just need to pay. When you choose what you need, the fabricator will show you a price. Just hit accept and use your ID. It will be deducted from the current month's wages. The only problem will be Elizabeth. You will need to get her sizes for the machines. We have everyone else's from when we gave them their clothing issue on the Eternal Garden. If you don't want to ask her yourself, maybe Rachel can help?" Wyatt looked at her. "Why would I not want to ask? Oh, right. Is this one of those questions I'm not supposed to ask a lady?" he asked. Clara just said, "If you already know the answer, Wyatt, why are you asking the question? Don't forget to take your basket on your way out." Wyatt picked up the basket and left. As he went out the door, he called out, "Bye, Cynthia." With the doors closed, Cynthia faded back into view, sitting in her normal spot. The 2 women said it at exactly the same time. How did he know? Returning to the comms office, Wyatt found Marcus, shaken, and Rachel, pleased. "Did the rat call back?" asked Wyatt. Rachel nodded. He was remarkably happy to help. "I'm not sure if the tax breaks that House Ferentis and House Astor have granted made up his mind, or perhaps it was the absolute terror when you told him I was appointed by Princess Clara. But he has offered a very generous deal on 2,000 datapads, given the models he was offering and the prices. I have already sent the credits." Wyatt groaned. "Okay, what's that going to cost me? 1,000,000 credits more?" Rachel laughed. Not even close. 500,000. He is also including 20 of their top-of-the-line models for free, as an apology for any offense he might have caused either the Baron or Her Highness. To be fair, we would have gotten a good deal due to the tax breaks being offered. Effectively, if the companies offer a discount, they get a tax reduction equal to twice the size of the discount. Their warehouse is pretty close. He said the data pads will be here in 9 or 10 days. Also, he offered you the exclusive dealership rights for their devices on Hago. I told him I would pass on the message and await the data pads. Personally, I know that no one on Hago has any credits, but sooner or later, when they start earning credits, they are all going to need data pads to access their funds. Even if we sell the cheapest, most basic model at a special rate, potentially that could be massive. Wyatt simply said, I will think about it, but right now I need to talk to the general on Hago. You can stay if you like. Wyatt adjusted the communications gear to link with Tornell's systems and was not surprised when Tornell appeared on screen within a few minutes of his call. The older man looked at Wyatt's visage on his own screen. What now? Was all he said. Wyatt shook his head. Am I that predictable? He asked. Tornell didn't seem upset, just replying, Yes, still the fish was welcome, so I'll listen to whatever you are going to ask for. Wyatt said, I have 137 Yikanti who are asking to be allowed to live in peace on Hago. Just over half of them are artists of one sort or another. The majority of the rest are farmers and slaves, with just a dozen warriors. I don't believe they represent any kind of risk, and I only ask for permission to allow them to live on my estate. But they are aliens, and it's your planet, General, so I am asking for your permission. Before I ask the townsfolk for theirs. Tornell looked across the screen at Wyatt. 137 Yikanti, you say? Wyatt nodded. Yes, General. Tornell took his time thinking about it, rubbing his chin with his right hand whilst he did so. Finally, after several minutes, he looked up. Well, you might be crazy, and so might I, but you can bring your Yikanti, though I suggest you keep them to your estate for at least a year. Maybe longer, so there are no unfortunate incidents with those less welcoming to Xenos. Thank you, General. I shall ensure they stay within the borders of the Barony, said Wyatt. Enjoy your evening. A hint of a smile reached Tornell's lips. I intend to enjoy a fish supper, thanks to you and my daughter. Good night, Wyatt. Wyatt smiled. Good night, Tornell, was all he said before closing down the transmission. Then he looked at Rachel and Marcus. Right then, you two. Dinner seems like a good idea. Rachel can tell me how much of my money she spent today and on what, and Marcus, you can tell me your plan for organizing a bunch of former Drazan prisoners of 2 different species into a cohesive population.